and welcome to Jung at Harp, episode number 187. Conversation of one, or how to have a useful conversation with yourself. Oh, okay. Yeah, how to have a useful conversation with yourself. I'm Deborah Henson-Conant, and usually I'm here with Kathleen Wiley. Kathleen's not here today, but I wanted to come on anyway, and I wanted to see what kind of a conversation I might have with myself alone, and to explore how that could be. How do we have a conversation? What is it about a conversation with someone else that might be different and the same as a conversation that we have together? How is it that being alone in a conversation is similar to, or how can we make it similar to a conversation that we have with others? I just woke up, so I'm a little bit bleary-headed, but I wanted to be here anyway, because part of any relationship is showing up. Whether we show up in absentia or whether we show up in person. And I wanted to see how much of Kathleen in this day when she's traveling, so she can't be there, how much of her also that might be able to be in this conversation, even though she's not here, and how much of her might show up, even though she's not here in person. So each week we meet to, in the spirit of conversation, and the spirit of discovery through conversation. And we meet with you because we're in a platform here where we can connect with your comments. And in fact, because Kathleen isn't here, I will be even more interested than I usually am in your comments, because they are part of this conversation as well. When I asked myself last night what I would like to explore today, because that's what Kathleen and I do. We meet with a question and we explore that question. We're not coming with answers, though we are coming with our lifetime experience. And because she's not here and she can't tell me if I can be heard, if someone can type into the comments that you're hearing me, that would be great. Now, we got hacked a week ago, and so I don't even know which channels I'm actually broadcasting on right now. And that is what's happening right now. So I wanted to talk about, the three sort of modes of discovery type learning, because Kathleen and I both have online communities, learning communities, where we share what we know. And she has an embodiment circle, and I have a harp academy where people are learning improvisation. And one of the things that I notice, I was presenting the academy is opening again. The new quarter is starting. Each quarter we look at a different concept, a different way in to music. And Sherry's saying, "We hear you, yay, that's great." So every quarter we take a sort of a different concept throughout the year. Hi Sherry, hi Monica, thank you so much, that's great. And I used to teach just classes like here's a skill for you to learn. And that's how it started. And here's a skill, here's the mechanics of it. You go off and that's what you need to know. And that's what I thought people needed to know in the beginning. And then as it went further, I realized they don't just need that from me. In learning, in how I learn, I need the information. But the minute I'm in pretty much any environment, any learning environment that is static, like if it's a video or something, and I start to try it out for myself, I immediately have questions. And the questions almost always are of how I'm going to implement that thing for myself. And it almost always follows the same pattern of like, well, wait a minute, what if blah, blah, blah. And so I discovered very early on, because I kind of fell in love with online learning. And I fell in love with online learning because I felt like I could actually get closer to the teacher than I could in a classroom. And I could get closer to watching the teacher interact with other students And therefore, I could engage these two parts of my learning. And right now, I just realized right now I'm experiencing having a conversation with myself, because I'm having a conversation with myself in the moment, thinking about what I wrote down. Well, I want to explore, why is it that classes, community, and coaching, why are these three things so important to learning? And then I just realized that I started talking about something I'm doing or something that I created. And then I went and I looked back on what made me create it that way. So, and then the bigger question that I'm looking at right now, right up here, is the mechanics of discovery. Probably that's what I should have called this. What are the mechanics of discovery? So, in having a conversation with myself here, I'm discovering that what I'm talking about is the mechanics of discovery. All right, I'm just going to go where my mind goes because Kathleen's not here. And I'm thinking, oh, this is why we talk to ourselves. This is why talking out loud to ourselves can make a difference. And now my brain is thinking, okay, well then how does that relate to playing music? Like knowing how to do something versus actually doing it. All right, so now I'm holding all these ideas in my head. I immediately want to go to the harp and try that out, see what that's like. But I want to come back and I want to complete this thought or move all the way into it, which is, okay, the mechanics of discovery, and why is it so important to have what the three elements that I like to have in anything, any environment in which I'm learning, and what I created also in the academy that I created. And that is the information that I can take on my own time, like a book, meaning the information is in a format that I can kind of become mine. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Wow. It's more important. Yeah, it is important. Okay, I didn't think about this. So it's important for me to have the learning stuff, whatever the teacher's teaching, but I need to have it in my own way. I need to be able to write on it. I need to be able to write in a book. Like I love to write in the margins of books, or argue with the book, or have what I have to say connected in with the book. And so having that learning material, having the basic information that the person who created the class had in whatever form, then being able to engage with it in an intellectual way, write on the page, or, if I put it into my own notes, put my thoughts in it. All right, so there's that sort of that part of it. Then there's the part of it where, and I just want to come back and say, what am I looking at? I'm looking at the mechanics of discovery, and I'm looking at them through the lens of my mode of learning and the mode of learning that I've created, which is Hip Harp Academy. All right, so the stuff I'm learning, the basic information that the expert has broken down and organized, however well or badly, for me in some kind of format that I can then take and on my own time and in my own way engage with. All right, okay, so there's that part of it. If you only saw all the other stuff that's happening over here in my head, when I say that, I see a cow. I see a cow ruminating on something I see a cow as a metaphor for how we kind of chew on something in our own time. Then there's the community. Sorry, now there's just lots of cows in my head. But that's fine. I mean, I grew up, a lot of time on my grandmother's farm, and there were a lot of cows. And so I'm just thinking and now I'm okay. So now in the mechanics of discovery, I'm no longer just thinking of the question, but I'm thinking of the question through the metaphor of cows. So seeing other cows, seeing other people learning becomes becomes a really important part of learning, which is why I set up the academy the way that I did, though I didn't set it up that way in the beginning. I actually, in the beginning, set it up to be like, okay, I'm teaching you something, and this is the thing I'm teaching you, and I'm done. La, 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 la. Like I'm the author, and that's the end of it. I don't know exactly why I did it that way. I think I may just not even had the time to create community, and I didn't know how. But when I used to go study with my coach, Tony Montanaro, who was a mime, who did not wear whiteface, and who talked. Mime, the word mime doesn't have to do with wearing whiteface and not speaking. That's sort of a convention that grew up around it, just like playing the harp doesn't have anything to do with playing classical music. A harp is a harp, and it doesn't have to take a certain shape, and it doesn't have to play a certain kind of music. But so often, those kinds of stylistic conventions grow up around any particular thing. So I went to Tony Montanaro because I had been told that he was the guru of street performers. I didn't even really know what he taught, but I knew that he had made a huge difference in a lot of people's lives. And I was so frustrated with the harp and I was playing a big concert harp then, and I was so frustrated with being behind it and having to carry it around and all the things that were making it difficult to really engage with it. And I was ready to walk away from the harp, but I took it to him. So where I'm getting at right now is that was the first time I had been in an environment in which two things were happening. And I wasn't necessarily aware of them at the time because I came to study with him. But there were other people in the class. I think there were 12 people there. And I suffered through the times when he was teaching the other people, waiting for the time for me to get up there, for him to work with me. Until I began to observe, and this wasn't for a while, that I, in some ways, learned so much more by sitting back and being able to see him engage with these people. And I think one of the reasons it was so engaging was because if I'd been watching him and had some principles, like we do in the academy, for example, in the last quarter, the principle was the power of pattern. So this principle was something that we could use to look at really everything in our lives, not just what was happening on the screen, but also what was happening, in any particular part of our lives. And having that concept, not like a filter, but like almost like a pair of binoculars or something, it allows us to look at anything through the concept, the power of pattern. And there's 4 concepts through the year. The power of pattern, we're about to go into a quarter that's called Structure is Freedom. Then in the beginning of the year, Creative Resonance. It's really about how to develop creative resonance. And then the third quarter is Grounded Expansion. And if you take any of those concepts and you use them at any moment, you can look at anything that you're doing through those concepts. Like right now, the power of pattern, I'm looking at, okay, I'm here today because there's a pattern that Kathleen and I show up on Friday mornings right around 9:15. And even though Kathleen couldn't be here today, I thought, well, what if I continue that pattern? How much of her will show up? And how much of all of you will show up? I said, as Victoria, right on cue, reminds me, I don't know if this is what she's saying, but reminds me that the part of the beauty of this conversation of Jung at Harp is that the conversation is with you as well, that we found a platform that makes that possible. And Victoria says, conventions are conventional. You are anything but conventional. So it makes sense that you wanted to do something different. Yes. Also, Victoria, and I think this, I kind of wish, well, okay, so there's an overarching concept in the academy, which is this foundation. You start with foundation, which leads to functionality, which leads to fluency, which leads to freedom. And I'm saying this based on what you said about conventions are conventional. If you don't know a convention, that can be both helpful and it can be non-helpful. I moved every year of my life as a kid. My family just moved every summer. That's what we did. And so there were certain things that I just completely missed. And that instead I had to sort of where the grocery store was in the last town was irrelevant in the new town or the new country that I was in. So, but there were foundational ideas like there's probably a grocery store around here somewhere, or if not, there's probably a way to get something to eat around here. So I think that I kind of missed a lot of those conventions. And so when I came to the harp fairly late in life, I hadn't even seen that whole harp thing. I didn't really know there was a harp thing. I kind of knew that it could make you look, pretty and accessible. And I knew that it would kind of allow me a way of being that I didn't have. And at the same time, that way of being kind of chafed for me. And what happened with the harp is I started thinking of it through Tony. And thank you for this, because it's often very difficult to break our conventions. And I want to tell you how that convention was broken for me, because I couldn't break out of it. And I'm going to pull up what Monica says. I can't see it yet, but I'll pull it up in a sec. And just to say, we're talking about conversation of one, which I'm not actually having. I just realized, but it started that way, and the mechanics of discovery. And so Victoria has brought in the idea of convention being conventional, and how I shouldn't say this, but how it can give us a start of like, this is what you do. Like if you know certain conventions, it is super helpful. One of the conventions, it's hard to know whether it's a foundation or a convention, but one of the conventions that I teach in the academy, especially this next quarter, is the conventional way of structuring ideas. I teach it in a musical way, and I've seen this convention in Baroque times, and I've seen it in jazz. I saw it in these two places, and I was like, what's that? It can be foundational. If you take away the extra stylistic conventions, then it becomes foundational. So I would say that stylistic conventions can be, sorry, my brain went, well, they can be constraining unless you're a spy. And then they're very helpful because they help you become, to be someone you're not. Okay, so let's see what Monica's saying. I'm wondering, what is the difference between discovering and learning? In order to discover, I have to be open to something new and unexpected. Yeah, Monica, you're in the academy, and so you hear me talking about discovery all the time, because I'm always trying to set up the environment or whatever I'm teaching in a way that will lead to discovery rather than, well, this is really interesting. I wish Kathleen was here. I think that learning is, I'm going to say something that's not exactly what I mean. You could think of it as a passive thing we learn. Meaning, like, there was a quote by Oliver Wendell Holmes, and I think many other people have said the same quote, but the way he said it was, he was a doctor and a philosopher. This was Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. He happened to live in this area, and I wrote a play about him years ago, so I got to read everything he wrote. And he said, I dressed his wounds, but God healed him. And I didn't really understand that at first, but it kept coming up over and over and over again, to the fact that I was like, well, what does this mean, and why is this so meaningful to this person? And what I think he was saying was, there are things there are natural processes, and learning is a natural process. Creativity, being creative is a natural process. Healing is a natural process. I'm sure there are other natural processes. Like you can do things in order to learn, or you can inhibit your learning, but you can't actually, I don't know, maybe you can sit down and learn something. I don't know. That's a good question. And discovery also happens, but I think there's a mechanics of discovery. I guess there's a mechanics of learning too. That's a great question. What is the difference between discovery and learning? I guess I think of learning as being, okay, here's the principles, I want to learn them. And along the way, especially as I start putting them into practice. So having a practice seems to be a really important part of discovery. And that's one of the reasons that this quarter, I've actually created this gizmo, this little machine thing to help. I'm not just giving people things to do or giving them things in a book form, but I literally created a little machine that lets people kind of like poke something to get their different introductions, poke something to get different tunes that they could play, poke something to get different ideas for improvisation, and just engage with it in the hopes that through doing this, people will discover a bunch of things. I'm hoping that they will discover how this structure works that I've been trying to teach for a long time. I'm also hoping that they'll discover after a point that one day they'll say, wait a minute. And this is one of my favorite things, this, wait a minute. I love it when it happens in my life, and I love it when it happens in other people's lives. So I'm hoping by giving them this little almost toy, it actually is a toy. It's like a toy and it's like a game because of the interactivity. I just realized that. And if anybody wants to see it, I actually showed it yesterday. I did a Q&A for the Improv Now challenge that we're doing. So how would you get there? Go to hipharp.com/improv. Or I think there's probably, if you just go to hipharp.com, there's probably a bar up at the top that says to go to this challenge. And when you go to the challenge, you'll get in. And then when you go in, you'll get a replay from yesterday. And in that replay from yesterday, oh, you know what? Oh, you're just telling me. I just realized I need to go and put that part of that thing onto the webpage about Hip Harp Academy. Okay, so I just discovered that. All right. So we're talking about discovery versus learning right now within the conversation of the mechanics of discovery. And I'm thinking that the mechanics of discovery and learning is that, first of all, we get things through different formats. We get through discovery. For some reason, I feel it has to do with our engagement and our kind of owning something on our own, so that when people take a fundamental concept rather than a completed stylistic document, which is what a piece by Mozart or a piece by Bach is, a completed stylistically infused well, it's a manuscript. It is complete in itself. And the difference is that when you start with a foundation and an idea, you can create it in many different ways. And for me, as a kid who was moving all the time and there was a lot of chaos, having something simple that I could remember, that I could then build things out of, was a really important thing to have. Because I might not be able to find something more complex that I might not be able to find it. So being able to know it and have it be very simple was an essential part of me being able to engage with anything. So for example, and then I want to pull up Victoria's next thing. When I was struggling with history and like all the different dates and not being able to remember them, and I remember that my mother said to me, okay, stop, don't try to remember all of them. Remember one date, just one. I chose 1783. And did I though? No, 1763. All right, chose 1763. And then, so I chose one date, and then everything else, she said, just, everything else in relationship to that. I chose it because it was a Stamp Act or something like that. Anyway, here we go. Let's pull up these comments. And how are we doing on time? Okay. Wow. Okay. So Victoria says some patterns are conducive to creativity and breaking conventions. Yes. Yes. Showing up regularly to explore and discover will lead us to something new and different eventually. Yes. And Victoria, this is where I was interested in exploring about that the Academy isn't just classes and the practices, but a really important detail, really important, and I've discovered how important it is over time, is doing it in community of like-minded people, in a community of discoverers versus a community of presenters. I always noticed that when people would say, well, go and learn from this, and I'd be like, I'd go on the internet or something, and there'd be some polished person doing something, and I can't even learn from that. It's so complete and it's so done that I can't learn from it. But I noticed how much I learned from people who were presenting something that was in process. And this is what I wish I could go back to my first days with Tony Montanaro and actually watch him again, knowing his principles that I learned over time by studying with him, and actually be able to see him coaching others, because that's when I think a lot of light bulbs, even many more light bulbs, would have gone off. I was just really both in exploration and also resistance when I first started studying with him. So this is great. Yes. And some patterns are conducive to creativity. And I do love sharing the patterns I think are conducive to creativity. But then when we watch others engage with those, I think that is when others who are at our level or who have different technical abilities than us, and often many people who think they are technically limited. But if people think they are technically limited, but will take on the foundational form and play with it, to me, this is one of the most exciting, it's one of the most exciting sort of places of discovery, because then you're seeing, raw, creative. I won't even finish my sentence. Let's see what. And Victoria says, look up Bloom's taxonomy. The framework consists of 6 levels of cognitive processes, each building on the one below. The order is remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. And so funny. And so Victoria says, so I think discovery is in the realm of create, which means, wait, there's more here, which means, it's not on the page, which means we first need to learn to understand and apply. Oh, you know that as soon as we look at this, I'm going to say, wait a minute. Is the order remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create? Or is the order not quite get it, try it anyway? You know my brain is going to be like, yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, really? Which leads me to think this. Because what I'm hoping will happen. Okay. Well, that's interesting. I will look at that and I'll think about it, because I think for me, there's also this like, take it apart, forget, don't do it right, get the general gist of it, even though you don't get it. Oh, this is so interesting. All right. And one of the reasons I think I love foundation is that with a really great foundation, it is both true and not true. So one of the things I love about the foundational structure that I teach this quarter is that if you go look at it, if you start practicing it, at a certain point, you'll be like, wait a second, how come it has to be like that? Why couldn't you put this first and then that and then this and then that? And what you discover is you can. And then you're thinking like Picasso, which is, someone who is taking structure that's already there in the world, and how much can you take it apart and have it still be experienced as structure, even though it's been abstracted. And Donald's saying hello, and Rose is saying hello. So thank you. First of all, I know we have to leave in like 1 minute. Okay, so back to the original conversation. First, conversation of one. Obviously, that isn't here. This is a conversation of many, even though I thought I was alone. And Victoria says the patterns that you teach give us the foundation to remember and understand. Yeah, that's my intention, Victoria. And it comes from my childhood of having the memory of a sieve. And then I've only developed that, inability to remember complex patterns all the way through my life. But I do know that for me, and what I love to teach is, instead of teaching a complex pattern, teach many simple patterns, or several simple patterns, fundamental patterns. And then when you put them together, they start to create these things that appear complex, but you're experiencing that you're doing something simple with it. So how does that work for me in this last minute? A conversation of one. Okay, Deborah, is not a conversation of one if you do it out loud and if you do it with friends. Okay, so that's number one. The mechanics of discovery. Wow, I don't have an answer. And yet, I feel like I've been able to be in those mechanics here with you today. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Kathleen, for being here in spirit. I miss everything that you would have said today, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. And I think she's in the air in an airplane. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing all of you. Oh, if people are not in the challenge yet, it goes to the end of the weekend. And it's all open now. So you could do it all in one afternoon. And I think someone added one more thing. Oh, thank you, Monica. So I will say farewell and see you all again very soon, and go forth in the spirit of discovery and the spirit of this question. And as you discover the mechanics of discovery in yourself, I hope that you'll share that with me and with Kathleen and me, and in weeks to come. All right, farewell, and I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.
Visit jungatharp.com for show notes, contact links, and to follow the ongoing conversation. That's Jung, as in Carl Jung, the famous psychoanalyst, and harp, as in the many-stringed instrument.